It's a happy Tuesday here at Breaking Views. One of our pet projects, trying to get companies to split their chairman and CEO roles, seems to be picking up some traction. We've got a big union going after them. Some business grandees are on board. Richard, what's the news, and tell us a little bit about sort of why this has been a cause to live for us.
This is a big public sector union, the AFSCME in the US, targeting JP Morgan, Goldman, some other companies this year. It's proxy season, it's the annual meetings are coming up, so they're putting these shareholder resolutions on the ballot, say, you know, divide, split the roles of chairman and CEO. Now, the UK did that a long time ago. The US...
And it was codified in some... I mean, they're not hard and fast rules, but pretty much everyone sticks to them.
You really have to justify it if you're not going to do that.
Right, if you're not going to do it. So it has become standard practice.
So the AFSCME is doing more this year than last. There were a few votes last year. ExxonMobil was one that got quite a lot of publicity. It didn't pass.
Citigroup
but it got
split them a few years ago as well.
Companies have been doing it a bit.
Slowly.
You know, Apple did it. Steve Jobs died. Tim Cook did not get the chairman role.
Right.
They appointed
So we've seen
else.
a little bit of movement on this, but now we've got the union doing it, and now we've also got this this group of former chairmen.
There's a group of chairmen now. You could argue they're interested parties in a way, but on the other hand, they think companies should do this voluntarily. And on a sort of, like you were saying, Rob, on a sort of comply or explain basis, if you don't split the roles, then at least explain to shareholders what the advantage is supposed to be of not splitting the roles. Rob, because this is about accountability.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, what is the advantage? I mean, why is this such a big deal about splitting?
It's very basic. Everyone needs accountability. And as it is now, if you have just one person both as the head of the board and running the company, they can do what they want. And you can have counterexamples. People say, like, look at Steve Jobs. He was brilliant, and yeah, he was brilliant. But not everyone.
He's sort of the exception that
not everyone
proves
is
the
Steve
rule
Jobs,
in a way,
exactly. And for everyone else, it's good to have someone saying, hold on, that plan doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't, spend $4 billion break fee to buy T-Mobile.
Of course, you can argue it doesn't always work. BP, for instance,
actually had the roles split.
Had the roles split.
They turned out the chairman was not as
when they had their disaster in the US,
yeah.
the chairman wasn't the right guy to match the CEO they had. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to get.
You still need to have the right people there.
Jobs
it's not,
right,
yeah.
But as a kind of default position, you can argue whether it should be sort of mandatory, like in the UK, or voluntary, like some people are proposing for the US. But the idea that that should be the default seems to me to make a lot of sense.
Right. And there's also, I mean, there's a big thing about the roles being quite different. I mean, we've argued in particular with Goldman Sachs as an example.
Right.
So the chairman ought to be out there doing a lot of the sort of the public, with the CEO kind of.
Right.
I mean, as well as managing the board.
The chairman should be sort of making the case to politicians and the public about the value of the firm and all the rest of it, and the CEO should be managing.
It's almost like the Queen versus the Prime Minister in England. The Queen's the head of state, and she goes to hospitals and cuts the ribbon, but then Tony.
Obviously, it's a little more complicated than that.
Exactly.
It's a little more of a role for the chairman than that. But we'll see. But it seems to be gaining some steam in the US this time around. Like the best sort of example is say on pay, right?
That's another thing that was big in the UK.
Right. So this right now there's a voluntary vote, but the companies have to have the vote in the US on whether the shareholders like the pay package that's proposed for the top executives. Now
it's not binding.
It's not binding, but it sends a big message. And a few years back, nobody thought that was going to get.
Everyone was sort of brushing these things off, not a big deal, and now they've actually started to get some attention.
Clearly, it's a good thing that shareholders should be asked to look at the package and take a view on it.
Yeah. So that's a great issue that's picking up traction here in the U.S. We'll be back tomorrow with more Breaking Views.